Hello, everyone. I would like to invite for my honorable guest, Nick DeCourcy. Did I pronounce your last name correctly?
You did, Amy. You did. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. How are you doing today?
It's okay. Friday's a holiday for us. We work from Sunday to Thursday, so
Okay.
yeah. But we work Sunday, so Nick, maybe tell us about yourself, where you're from, what you do, and let's see how it goes.
Yeah, certainly. So, my name's Nick DeCourcy, as you've said. So, I'm based in Cincinnati, Ohio, in the US. I'm not originally from here. I'm from London, England.
Oh,
To,
I was
to
wondering the accent was a bit different,
Yeah,
but
I was chatting with a guy the other day who'd actually seen one of my videos, and he'd kind of reached out after that, and he was very confused when I told him that he needed to book some time in the Eastern US time zone because he was from England, and he just assumed that I was still in England as well. But
yeah,
I've been
okay.
I've been in the US for about 10 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Moved over here. My wife's from the US, actually. She's from Cincinnati, so that's why we're here. But originally from England, and I run a business called Bright Ideas Agency. It's just a single person business, and I focus on helping small businesses with digital transformation. And most of what I do is involving Microsoft 365. I don't exclusively work with Microsoft 365, but a lot of my work is with Microsoft 365 and specifically with Power Platform as well. But I touch other things, and a lot of I think a lot of your work, Amy, is very technical. Like a lot of my work is technical, but it's more about the general kind of understanding of how that technology works in business. And I've been doing this for a couple of years now. Prior to that, I'd spent about 20 years working on a whole variety of different things. My background
Okay.
isn't in IT. I actually, when I went to college, I got my degree in technical theatre. I specialised in sound design for
Oh,
theatre productions.
that's cool.
I ended up going into education. I worked in education. I worked in high schools for a little while. I then went on. I worked at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, which is one of the leading drama schools in the UK. I got very into kind of operations there, and I went on to be head of events at a university. I've been the director of operations for a catering company. I've been the
Oh
operations
my
director
God.
for an art museum. But all the way through, I've been really interested in technology. I've been interested in technology since I was a kid. I remember when I first got my first proper computer, an Amiga 500,
Oh.
playing around with that and being excited about it. So I've always been interested in technology. And then back in 2020, at the start of the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
technology was part of my role in what I was doing, but it wasn't a lot of my role at that point. And suddenly, technology became everything. Our ability to connect with one another using Teams, to be able to do things remotely, obviously became important for everyone. And I saw how valuable it was for the organization I was in, but also how much other, particularly smaller organizations, were struggling with this. And so I decided when the opportunity came up that I would start
Mm-hmm.
my own business. I would
I
become a
see.
consultant, and I would help other people with these challenges. So that's where I am now. Not a traditional route to doing what I'm
Yeah,
doing at
but
all.
yeah. So you mentioned you're a consultant, but do you also develop? Because I see you have. I mean, I don't know. You said your background is not really development, but
Mm.
you're doing development, and maybe you're doing low code, no code, but it's still some kind of development, which is yeah, it's something you need to learn and to get professional.
Mm,
So
mm. Yeah,
do you
I
do?
enjoy the low code tools. I started with Power Platform back when I was in my last job before I set up my own business, and as part of my kind of journey to feeling confident in my own skills to be doing what I'm doing now, I decided to pursue a bunch of Microsoft certifications. So I ended up getting the PL 900, PL 100, PL 200, PL 300, which is the Power
Oh my
BI,
God.
and ultimately the PL 600, which is the expert
Wow.
level in Power Platform. But still, you know, it's something I'm a tinkerer. There are some things, you know, that I could do that I enjoy doing, but I think it's the same as you, Abby. I'm still learning every day.
Yeah,
Yeah, you know,
definitely.
those certifications don't mean that you know it all. They don't mean that you know
No,
most of it, you know. Yeah, it's
yeah,
experience that's
experience
important.
that what shows. And actually, I want to ask you a question, because people say Power Platform or Power Apps or Power Automate is something that everyone can do. And I have and it's like a citizen developer, but I think if people have a background of development, it's much easier for them. And I don't have that. I'm more a consultant or implementer. And to be honest, I can do basic things, but it's not easy. You know, it has
Mm-hmm.
even things with dates and all kinds of things. Now maybe it's easier, but still you need to understand the logic of how to do it, to plan it, and also if you want it to look nice. And um, you know, sometimes it can be like a shadow IT, because if you develop
Mm-hmm.
something and you don't take in consideration um, governance and all kinds of things, this this can, if you're developing it only for you, maybe, but if it's for a company that 50 people, 200 people need to use it, it should be stable and it should be properly done. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think there are different levels of this. I think in one way, what we have available to us from a technology perspective obviously has grown over time. And I think, you know, when I started my career 20 years ago, it was perfectly acceptable for someone to look at an Excel spreadsheet and shrug their shoulders and say, I don't understand how that works. And that was the
Well,
end of it. That was perfectly reasonable. You could do that and you could get away with it. Whereas I think now,
yeah,
that is less
it's like Word.
acceptable.
It's like
Yeah,
Word, I think.
people
Most people learn it at school.
exactly. People expect you to have at least some understanding of how to do things with Excel, and I think over time, tools like Power Platform are going to get to the same place. Maybe not Power Apps so much as something like Power Automate, but ultimately, when we're thinking about you know, the line from Microsoft is we're all trying to do more with less, right? And if
Yep.
we're all trying to do more with less, then the only thing that we can do to kind of mitigate that is to have more tools at our disposal to maximize our productivity, to allow us to spend less time doing the kind of mundane routine things and to spend more time where we actually add value. And I think Power Platform, Power Automate specifically, but you know, Power BI as well, and as you move into Power Apps, these are
Yep.
tools that can help us with that. You know, Copilot is going to be something that helps us with that as well. But
Yep.
I think you're right. I think you have to understand where you're at, what level you're at. I know, like you, I know you're a member of a whole bunch of different groups where you see people ask requests of questions they've got, and I see some of these to do with Power Platform. And there are some where you can see that someone is starting out and they're starting out in a sensible way. They're trying to address problems that they have with their own work and they're trying to use the tools to sort those out. Whereas you see
Hmm.
other people are starting out with these big ideas and you're kind of scratching your head and thinking that isn't the way to start learning anything. You know, like if you're learning to swim, the best way
Yep.
to do it isn't just like to jump
To
into
jump
a
into the
river, you
water,
know, like
you should.
you need.
Well, some people say that's the fast, quick and dirty, but on the
Well,
other hand, you don't get the basics, so you need to.
it's sink or swim, right? And I think that's the problem with with what you're communicating here is one of these fundamental problems, like having the knowledge that you can do something without the knowledge of how to do something can be very dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Like within PowerPlatform, there's lots of different ALM techniques. There's lots of different approaches. You have solutions. I think a lot of people are familiar with solutions, but there's things beyond solutions that if you're using like Azure DevOps and so on and so forth, you can get into. Now, I know where I am comfortable. Like I am not comfortable in the enterprise grade ALM world. I'm fairly comfortable in the small
what
business
does
ALM world.
ALM stand for?
Application lifecycle management.
Okay.
So the idea that we'll have like a dev environment, and then we'll have a testing environment, and then only
we have
once
a productive.
then we're taking it to production and being able to separate out all of those things. These are concepts that pro code developers are working with every day, but they are things that low code developers need to learn about. And if you're starting to use these things in your business, and I'm sure it's the same with what you're doing with SharePoint, like you have staging sites where you're trying stuff out and then you bring things into production. Like it's just not a good idea to trying out new stuff on everyone all the time.
Yeah, I mean, you can have demo sites, or you can have a sandbox environment or something like that, but it's much less dangerous. So I actually wanted to ask you, because the way I noticed you was I see lots of your videos, and I was wondering how did the idea come up to start your YouTube channel? And I must say, the way you make them, they're very professional, because you take videos and you talk, and even subjects that just came out, you talk as if you know it already 1 year. So first of all, can you tell me how come how come the YouTube channel came out, and how do you work and plan things and think of ideas? So give me
Sure.
some.
So, I mean, in terms of why did I start doing YouTube? Well, I'd never really watched YouTube a lot until 2020, until the pandemic. And then I found that it immediately became a very, very useful resource in finding out different things about the things that I was trying to do. So when I decided that I was going to start doing this full time, one of the things that I immediately wanted to do was to share information. I've a lot of my work has either been in education or been in non-profit. So I've been in spaces where we can't afford to hire people to do things all the time. Like a lot of the work that I've done had been on the basis of, go out and work out how to do it and kind of bootstrap it. So I wanted to be able to contribute to the types of things that I'd been interested in previously and the things that I hadn't been able to find out about. So, so about a year in on my journey of starting my business, I decided I now feel I'm at a place with different examples, with different things that I've done, that I think I have something worthwhile to say. And so I started making YouTube videos. I'd done a bit of blogging before that. And to be honest, if I look back at those first videos now, they are not very good. Like I didn't feel confident. Like it was a completely new thing. But I wanted to share information, and that's where it really comes from. I think some of the videos that I feel proudest of that I've put together have been where I've thought of business scenarios that I would like to see answers to, and being able to put those to get things like I did a video on extending Microsoft bookings so that you could have a kiosk, a physical kiosk, and people could log into their to their visit when they came into your organization. So you could use bookings not just for virtual, but in person as well. And that certainly isn't my most popular video, but it's one of the ones that I feel proudest of, because I know a lot of people have benefited from that information. People have reached out to me and benefited from that information. And I know that's very similar to you, Amy, that you get that kind of positive feeling when people have benefited from the knowledge that you've shared. And I think we're probably
Definitely.
very similar in that regard.
Yeah. So how do you get to for ideas? Is it things that you come from use cases from customers, or is it things that you just think that are new that are worth sharing, or a combination, or
Yeah, I think it's a combination, really. Some of them are use cases that interest me, that they're technologies that I've worked with previously and things that I've not been able to do in previous roles, and thinking about how could you fix those problems with Microsoft 365 and Power Platform. A lot of my work is about extending what Microsoft 365 can do using Power Platform. That's kind of a theme of the more technical videos that I make.
Yeah.
And then some of it is about updating on what's new, what's coming out. And then the last piece is about general education. I've made videos, like, for example, on if you're a small business owner, how would you go about outsourcing some of your IT? Because I think that's a very important and relevant topic, going back to what you were just saying about, the concerns about rolling out things like Power Platform. Like, I want to be able to give my clients that kind of start to finish, and I want to be able to do the same thing on my YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, I'm actually sharing now your YouTube channel.
Yeah, I see it here.
Yeah, so if you want to, do you have all kinds of different playlists on different subjects? Or yeah, I see.
Yeah, I
But
have some different playlists.
I'm impressed on the graphics and the way you do it, and you include videos, and very, very professional, I must say. And I can learn from you, but I think it's very interesting. And if anyone wants to visit, they're welcome. And okay, we're back here, and actually I want to go and talk more technical.
Okay.
And the question that next question I want to ask is, what features are you looking for in a roadmap or in the future? You talked about Copilot, AI, all kinds of things. Please tell our listeners and watchers what do you think will be a game changer? And yeah.
Well, I think you probably already know what I'm going to say for this, Abby, because I
We didn't
touched this topic a lot
coordinate
on
anything.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
but I touched this topic a lot on LinkedIn. You've probably seen it, but Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot, I think is probably the most exciting change that we're going to see in Microsoft 365 in a very, very long time, in my opinion. And I think what's going on there is very exciting. Just because to me, there's very few product announcements that I see. And I don't know, have you seen the product announcement videos for things like Copilot? Like, there are very few things like that genuinely, like, you feel excited when you're seeing them. And
well, they touch even Word, Excel, or application, SharePoint, Power Platform. It's really going to be lots of
yeah.
okay.
I remember back in the mid-90s when I was on that Amiga that I was talking about. Like, I remember I started learning to code at that point. I had a program called Blitz Basic, a version of Basic. And the first thing that I wanted to do was to be able to write something to the computer and it respond to me, to give me and obviously I was like 12 at the time or something, so I had no concept about any of this that was going to come. But I remember very clearly that was in my mind as to what could be useful to do, be able to type to the computer and the computer respond to you like in a sci-fi movie, and I think that with something like Copilot, we're finally getting there. We're finally getting to the point where it's more about what you know about your business. It's more about what you know about the industry you're in than about what you know with technology that enables you to do stuff. And I think that's such a game changer because, with 30 years, we've had computers on people's desks. And there are
Yeah.
still people who are very interested in the technology, and there are still people who hate the fact they have to touch it every single day. And 40 years in, that's not going to change. 50 years in, that's not going to change. We have to change the paradigm to make this something that is useful to everyone. And I think technologies like Copilot are going to change that paradigm and suddenly make this useful to everyone.
But won't it make people more lazy? Or people will, if it, or maybe they will have time to do more important things than just like, because if you depend on the chat GPT or the AI to do everything, then we can all go to the beach. But actually, there might be even different jobs that relate to this AI, but in some way it can save time. But on the other side, it might just, people will be lazy and say, "Oh, I'll try to do it. Let's see what." And you know what? Sometimes the answers will not be correct, and you need to validate if what the information that is provided is correct, because sometimes it's garbage in, garbage out, or it's not relevant. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. I think if you go back to the start of the 20th century, when standards of what we work right now, the 5-day working week, for example, came in. I think it was Ford plants, Henry Ford, who originally started like the 5-day working week. And at
Yeah.
that point, I know that economists around that time were saying things like, due to productivity increases, the productivity increases we've seen through the Industrial Revolution, by now, by the time that we're in, it'll only be necessary for people to work, I don't know, 2 days a week or something like that. That these gains were going to accrue to everyone. And that isn't what's happened. That isn't what's happened at all. The gains that we've seen in productivity have accrued to certain parts of our economy, and they have not accrued equally to everyone. So my hope is that, like, technology has changed how we work. We've seen technology change how we work. It's technology that took us out of fields into cities, into factories, into the world that we're in right now. And there are lots of positives in that, and there are also certain negatives in that as well.
Yeah.
And it's technology that will help us to change that again. So I'm hoping that through technologies like AI, businesses will look at how can we share the benefit? How can we, there are a lot of people who are very stressed because they're constantly getting dings on their phone from new emails, new messages. There are a lot of people who are dealing with mental health issues due to the various things that have gone on in the last few years. And I think businesses generally, when implementing these technologies, need to be looking at how can we share the benefit. And I know that is a key part of what Microsoft is trying to do with the Copilot brand. That Copilot brand is very, very clever. Like, this is about augmenting the pilot. We are the pilot. It is the Copilot.
So it's a helper. Yeah, but you still
exactly.
need to decide if to go or not to go, or to or to teach it. Maybe you need to teach it or train it.
What do you think
My next question.
about what do you think
Go
about the
ahead.
Copilot in SharePoint? I know that Copilot is coming to SharePoint. What's your thoughts on that?
We something okay. I still don't know exactly what it will be, but it seems that you'll be able to describe or a story telling, and it will create pages or sites and other things. So there's more. I'm still vague what it will do, but I hope it will give all kinds of new things, capabilities. Maybe it will integrate into Teams and other things. So we need to see. And there's actually maybe things that Microsoft has not released, or they're under NDAs. As you know, I was nominated. I'm already awarded as a MVP, so some things I cannot reveal, but I can say very interesting things are gonna be in the pipeline. So just let's wait and see. But I think it will be a revolution. But again, we need to see how, because if it's in Word, it can make a summary. If it's in Excel, you can already tell it to make a graph or do all kinds of things. If it's in, I hope, and even in a Power Automate, right? You can already type and say, write me a flow that does such and such, connects to this connector and this connector. But again, you need also to see what it does, because it just prepares a standard.
Yes.
My next question is, what things do you, or features you think need to be fixed or need to be improved? I mean, it can be SharePoint, in Power Automate. What do you think are things that are a bit need improvement? Well, do you have
Yes.
any things in mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think the area that I often come back to, and I try to like talk this up as something we should focus on whenever I can, so I will here as well, is I think that sometimes the capabilities of Microsoft's connectors that it builds for its first party apps for Power Platform are sometimes a little bit lacking. There are capabilities there that are logical capabilities that you might want, that you don't necessarily always see. And that could be something that's a little bit of a frustration when you're building stuff. Like a lot of the time you find that you're having to dig into requests in Microsoft Graph, for example, to be able to get the data that you want, when it would seem logical that you could get it through those first party connectors. So that's something that I think really needs work. That when and I would like to see I would like to see it as part of the way that Microsoft releases new features, in that there is a thought process of, when we release a new feature, we're going to release that feature across our tooling. So you're going to see that feature represented in Power Platform at the same time, so that if you're relying on low code behind the scenes to do stuff, you can suddenly you can work with a good example of this. I made this video a little while ago. I know you made a video, Amy, and I think I may have got this information from you, in that you can now edit forms responses.
Okay.
And I know our
Yeah.
mutual connection, Enya, he made some great content. And maybe you can link to that when you put this out, as I've mentioned him. But he made some great content about being able to pull out all of your forms responses using the SharePoint API, and he kind of discovered that you're able to do this. So I've made a video connected with that. But then I looked into this this editing feature that you've got, and what I found was you can't track what's being edited using that data that you pull out.
Yeah, it's stuck there. Yeah.
It's like suddenly, like, people may have built these things behind the scenes, and those things are potentially going to be a little bit broken by these advances. And I think that would be fine if Power Platform wasn't a Microsoft product, if Microsoft wasn't pushing this as, you know, you should be developing using Power Platform, that would be fine. If everyone was using Zapier or something like that. But because it's all Microsoft's ecosystem, it would be great if these considerations were part of that development process. And I think to some extent they are, but it's not as integrated as it should be.
Well, I think one of the newest features that will come, maybe in fall, will be that the Microsoft Forms will be integrated in the Microsoft lists.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So you will not need to do any automations or from the Power Microsoft Forms to Microsoft List, because instead of exporting to Excel or something like that, it will be stored there. And then maybe if you do a change, it will just update the list. So maybe that will be a solution for for the problem we have currently, or that you
Yeah,
raised in the
it'll be
video.
interesting to see how that works. Like, will you get a version of the item in the list based on that change? Will you be able to see a version history of those changes that have happened?
I'm,
So I think there's a little bit of like, how technically will these things work? And sometimes there isn't enough information that's shared about that kind of technical behind the scenes. How does this stuff
mhm.
actually work? You know?
Yeah. Do you have any idea for features that are not existing and you would be on your wish list? I mean, you talked about the connectors, but I don't know if it was something to fix or something new totally that you would like.
You know,
Do you have any?
I don't necessarily think there's anything new totally.
Hmm.
I think that piece of how things integrate between different apps is really important. I'm very excited about Loop. I think those Loop components, I see that as being a mechanism that over time is going to help to fix those connectivity issues. Because for so long, this kind of plethora of apps that you've got in Microsoft 365, it enables you to do things in the way that you might want to do them, which is great from an individual end user perspective. But those things haven't always talked to one another in logical ways. Like, if you take,
Hmm.
for example, doing a to-do list in OneNote, like, that makes perfect logical sense that you can make a to-do list in OneNote, but that to-do list can't go anywhere. It's never been
Yeah,
able. So
it's
I
like
know.
a Word document.
Yeah, exactly. So this idea of loop components, that the component is going to be the kind of the structure that you're working on, and you're going to be able to display that pretty much anywhere in Microsoft 365. I think that's very exciting, and I know this is something they've been working on for a very long time, and hopefully it means that if you are someone who wants to work in Outlook and I'm someone who wants to work
Yeah,
in Teams, then it doesn't matter anymore. You can just work.
yeah.
And I think that's where we're getting to.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, I've been playing around with the look component for almost a year since it's
Mm,
rolled out. I don't know how much the adoption has been, uh,
mm.
or how many organizations are really using it. It's there, but it has a potential. And by the way, the loop already has a separate app,
Yes.
which I wish it would be integrated in the app launcher of the
Oh, I
365. So
I
because now it's
agree.
like standalone, or maybe it's, but once it's there, maybe people can find the benefit and will adopt it and find uh, to work in it.
Mm. I
Because
personally, I don't know what you think about this, but I think that the Loop app is a little bit of a misstep.
I
Because
missed.
I think that what would make more sense is to promote the fact that you could use Loop components in the standard Microsoft 365 apps. The fact that we now have a Loop app, what it enables anyone who's looking at this from like a non-tech, anyone who's not a techie, just sees
Yeah.
another app. It's another app that I need to think about. Whereas what
Hmm.
we need to do is we need to educate users on, it's a different working paradigm. You can create something in Word that then lives in your email and lives in your Teams, and it's the
Yeah.
same thing. It's the same component. And creating the Loop app, I think, in my mind, it shortcuts our ability to share that message, or it certainly undermines that message a little bit. So I think the Loop app, from my perspective, is a little bit of a misstep.
Yeah. But you can create like I'm not. I haven't played around with it, but you can create like pages and like a workspace.
Hmm.
So it in some way it might somewhere, or maybe it should be integrated into Teams or somehow. I don't know exactly, but we will see what's exactly. Now, I have another question. How do you, when you work with a customer and he wants something, how do you relate to the limitations that Microsoft gives? to give you an example, okay? From my perspective, Microsoft gives hard limits and soft limits. The hard limit is what's written, and soft limit is what impractical, what you can work. And how do you? I mean, do you take in consideration when you build a Power App? Do you say, should I work in lists? Maybe there's a threshold, or maybe I will work with what's it called? That Dataverse, or maybe a
Metaverse, yeah.
SQL server, or other things. So, and there's ways to work around them, yeah. But sometimes there's boundaries and best scenarios or to deal with for a problem. So how do you think for yourself and for the customer?
Yeah, I mean, in the space that I work in, those very big data limits that you run into in some of these platforms aren't hugely relevant because the space that I work in, most of the businesses that I work with are less than 100 users. So we're not dealing with
Okay.
businesses that have hundreds of thousands or millions of records most of the time. So I'll caveat my response with that. But I do tend to, particularly when it comes to Power Platform solutions, focus what I'm doing on Dataverse. Just because I think Dataverse gives so many options that that lists does not as a data source. So, I mean, lists works fine for certain things, but there are things that you need to think about with lists that you don't need to think about so much with Dataverse. I mean, access control is a big one. You know, this is not built for the granularity of security that you might need on data, even for an app in a medium-sized business. But you know, I think there's a lot of misunderstandings that go into this issue. Like I know, like the issue of like delegation in Power Platform, where you're looking at data sources where you're either doing the work in the Power Platform app or you're doing the work on the data source level. I know that can bring a lot of confusion to people. The display limits of what you can actually see versus, you know, the 5,000 item thing versus what you can actually store brings a lot of confusion. And these aren't, you know, these aren't really technical hard limitations if you know what you're doing with the platform, but a lot of people will start building something and not think about that. But it goes back before that, you know, like when you're building something on data, like whether you're using Dataverse or SharePoint or whatever you're using, the right way to think about it is to think about your data model first, to think about the data that you want to store, how that data is going to relate. But, you know, that isn't the way that most, you know, business users, if they're not in this space, they're just using these tools for the first time, that isn't necessarily the way they think about it. So sometimes the education piece for me can come after someone's started to build something. They might come to me with something that doesn't work. And trying to unpick what has already been done to put it back into a structure that's going to work for them in the long term is the biggest challenge, and to get people to understand that. So, you know, I think there's a lot of flexibility there. And you know this, Ambi, that like there are these limits and people know about limits, and but some of the limits, like you just shared something this morning about 1,000 channels in a team. Like that's going to be the new limit.
That's crazy.
I'm scratching my head, and I'm like, you know, for there might be one or two businesses where you're hitting up against the existing limit, and there's a good reason why you might need more. For everyone else, you just need to design your environment better if you're hitting up against these limits. And I think that's
true.
The biggest
I
challenge.
get lost. I get lost in a team with 20 channels, and I hide half of them. I don't imagine what teams have 200 channels, and now that you might have 1,000 channels, just to identify where each one is would be a challenge. and then also to create it, maybe you would need automation. So I made a video on how do you choose an item in the list which creates a team
Yeah.
or a channel. And actually that would be the only way of doing it, because manually need to create 1,000 channels would be crazy. um, I would like to ask you, we almost at the end, so I would like to ask you, do you see yourself as a fast learner or as an early adapter that you'd like to test things?
Um, I think in terms of being a fast learner, I don't think I'm a particularly fast learner of
Well,
things. I think I'm not a very rigorous learner. Like I think there are some people that like to really explore every part. I think you do some of this, Amy, because you're like to make videos that focus in on particular features, and I know from listening to what you've said previously that one of the reasons that you like to do it that way is because then you've got the catalogue of things that you've already explored to come back to. And I'm not
yeah,
very
yeah,
I'm not very structured in that. I'm not structured in the same way. Like I don't kind of. I know you spend time in the message center and you'll be looking at things that are coming up. I think
yeah,
my approach is a little bit more chaotic than yours in that I'll have something that kind of excites me as a business problem, and then I'll try to like combine together different things that are out there or different things that are coming up in order to fix it. So I enjoy learning, but I wouldn't say I'm a very
yeah.
structured learner of starting at A and going on to Z.
It doesn't matter. I mean, you can do whatever you want. You have your own business, and actually, I can say, for instance, all of the videos of the new features, AI Copilot, it thinks that just came out, and I saw videos, and you're talking as if you are the product manager of Microsoft about it. But it just shows that yeah, when you're interested in something, then yeah, because it shows. Now, what do you do besides technology? Is special you'd like to share with us? You do any extreme something, or you do what do you do on your free time? Is there
So
anything you would
I'm
like to share with the audience?
I'm pretty boring outside of this, to be honest with you. But
Oh, okay.
uh, we
Well,
we 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 have a 2-year-old, so he absorbs like a lot of time
oh,
outside of
I see.
doing this. So
Yeah.
yeah, we have a 2-year-old, and that absorbs a lot of time. We live in a 120-year-old house that we're trying to
Oh my God.
renovate. And
Wow. Wow.
I do a lot of work on that myself. So between those two things, I don't
Yeah.
really have any big exciting. I know, for
Yeah.
example, you have your band that you're a member of. You play the trumpet and
Yeah.
you have
Well,
that as a hobby.
yeah.
So nothing
I mean,
exciting like that.
yeah, we don't. Yeah, but if you fix up things, that you mean you're handy. That means you can fix. I need to pay someone to fix something. So to replace something. But sometimes. So I for at the end, I would actually want to ask you, how can people reach you? LinkedIn, Twitter. What would be the best way to?
Yeah, certainly. So I guess head over to the YouTube channel is a good place to start. I'm most present on LinkedIn. That's the social media where I have the most presence. Or my website is brightideasagency.com. I link all my videos there as well as part of my blog, and there's some contact information there if people want to reach out.
Okay, I want to say that I got to know you from LinkedIn, and I think you're a very special person, very talented,
Oh, thank you.
and your knowledge is very detailed, and you explain things that even people which are not technical can understand in very simple words and very broadly. And the way you present it is really, really professional. I mean, in my YouTube videos, I really don't invest time in how it looks, just more practical. But you take all things together, and it really looks nice. So take it as a
Well,
compliment.
thank you. Well, I think you produce a lot of content out there, and you touch all of these new features. I learn a lot from watching your videos. There's a lot
Thank
of your
you, thank
videos
you.
that I've watched, and I think if you're and not just I know your channel is called SharePoint Wizard, but I don't think
Yep,
people should think that it's just SharePoint. Like if you're interested in Teams, if you're interested in lists, if you're interested in kind of general features in Microsoft
yeah.
365, your examples are a good place to start
Thank
because
you,
they're
thank
they're,
you.
they're, they're quick and they're effective and they touch all the points. But I think there's space out there for the way that everyone wants to communicate these topics. Like there's a lot of topics to communicate, and different
Hmm.
people learn in different ways. And I think there's lots of different approaches, lots of different techniques out there that people have
Yeah,
to address these issues. And I think, like anything, you will find if you're someone who's starting out, if you're someone who's learning, you will find someone or a group of people who have an approach that works for you. I think when you were talking with the last podcast that you did with Greg,
Greg, SharePoint
um,
Maven. Yeah,
yeah, you talked like I remember 10 years ago. I think I was reading his material.
yeah.
So,
He's a
so
legend.
so just the fact that you have me on this podcast immediately after him, that's something
Wow.
that makes me feel good, Abby. But
Well, listen, you made a big impact and a big thing in the community, and I want to thank you for all of what you do. It might be part of your business, but I want to tell you the community really learns a lot from it. So thank you for doing that, and I think you should be MVP. I mean, if there's, I would really think you would be a proper person to be an MVP. But
well, that means a lot to me from you, and I will say I didn't really know anything about that program before kind of seeing the things that you've been involved in and the people that you've been connected to, and I've learned a lot about how the Microsoft community works through seeing the work that you've done. So I think that's like you have promoted this to so many people, and I think that's the
thank you.
reason. I think that's the reason that you've been recognized in the way that you have, because you've just done a really good job at connecting people with the fact that there's a community to be part of.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even think about it. For me, it was just sharing or something like that, and I was surprised to be nominated and even to be awarded was, it wasn't the target. The
Mm,
target was the content. Uh, that the point that I got it was just like a bonus and said,
mm.
okay, you invested some time, well, so you'll get some kind of a something. But as our time is ending, I would really want to thank you for accepting to be on my show, and I'm looking forward to be in contact with you in the future. So
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me, Amy, and congratulations.
thank you very much. Goodbye.
Take care. Bye bye.